everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. I'm Wendy, and we're starting our Dollar Tree DIYs for Christmas right now. For this Dollar Tree DIY, I'm using 3 styrofoam cones, some red and white yarn, 3 branch discs, 3 wooden dowels, 3 gold stars, and I ended up not using the pom-poms or the baker's twine. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a skewer and poke it into the bottom of my cone, and I'm going to paint one of them red because I'm going to be wrapping it in the red yarn and I don't want any of that white to peek through. And then I'm going to leave my other 2 cones completely white. And then while that's drying, I started wrapping one of my cones with the white yarn, and I started it off at the bottom and just used my hot glue and wound it all the way up to the top. And after that first round, you really don't have to use as much hot glue because it's just kind of resting on the yarn below it. And then you really can start going a lot faster as you move closer to the top. And if your strands aren't getting close enough to the previous rows, just use your thumb and push it down as you're twisting, and that should keep it close and snug as a bug in a rug. And then once I got to the top, I had planned for a big bow at the top, but then it started kind of looking like a party hat. So I'll cover that in a minute, but I will go ahead and cover the entire top in just a second. So then I started using my red yarn and I made 2 rounds and glued it on the back, and then did a section with 6 rounds and started building a flour sack stripe pattern with 2 thin rows and then a thick row and then 2 more thin ones until it was completely covered. Just make sure that all of your starts and stopping points are in the back, and so none of your seams will show from the front. And then I covered my red cone starting at the tippy top this time and moving toward the bottom. And either way works, but it seems to go a little bit quicker going from the bottom to the top because you can set your cone on your countertop and then start twisting it. But either way works just fine. So then I made 3 sweet little bows with some red and white gingham 5/8 inch ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I'll dovetail the ends and glue those to the tops of my trees, but I want them toward the front so that I would have room for my stars. So I'm just going to pull off the adhesive dot on the back of my star and then broke off a skewer and glued that onto the back of my star and then popped it into the top of my styrofoam. And you could also use a toothpick to do this part if you don't have any of the skewers. Next, I'm taking 3 of my wooden dowels and I'm going to mark the center of my discs with a pencil, and then I put each one of them on top of an empty spool, and then I drilled a hole into all 3 of them. I know Dollar Tree carries these discs, but I have never in my entire life seen them at any of mine. But I had a sweet viewer, Robin, gift me with these and a lot of other stuff, so I was able to make this project. So then I cut my dowels down to get my trees at different levels, and then I'll glue those into the bottoms of my trees. And then once I have them at the levels and order that I thought looked best, I'll glue the bottom of my dowels into those discs. So then I wanted to add a tiny bit of Christmas greenery, so I cut some tips off of a stem and then hot glued those to the sides of my ribbon. And then I'm going to take a little styrofoam ball off of another pick and cut a slice off of the back to make it flat, and then I'll glue that right in the middle of my bow. And here they are, all finished, and I think these are so very merry and bright. I love anything with textury goodness. And the metal sign is from Target's Bullseye Dollar Spot, and it was only $5. I love these trees, and I hope you like them too. In today's video, I'm teaming up with some of my sweetest friends here on YouTube making a Yuletide Trifecta. And we have Trish and Kay over at Crafting Cousins. And you guys, these girls are just adorable and so talented. They're so fun to watch and listen to, and they really are cousins, but they're more like sisters in real life. And then we have Kat over at According to Kat. And what can I say about Kat? She is the kindest and most thoughtful person, and I just love and adore her with my whole heart. Not to mention she's an amazing crafter, but I am just so blessed to call her my friend, and even more blessed to be sisters in Christ with all three of these beautiful ladies. So once you're finished with this video, please head on over to their channels. I'll have them linked in the description box below, and let them know that I sent you. And if you're coming over from their channels, I'm so happy you're here. For our next DIY, I'm using 2 gnome signs and 2 small frames, and I'm just going to take the wreath off of the red and black gnome. And when I pulled it up using my Cricut spatula, there was a little bit of the glue that was still on there, so I tried to get that up without ripping it too much, but where I did rip it, that's going to be covered by our little frame. And then on the black and white gnome, I'm going to place my frame going vertically, and so I didn't need to remove the package, and it was the perfect size to also let his hands show like he's holding the frame. So I measured to see where the little tabbies were on the back of my frame, and then took a craft knife and dug deep inside there so that my frame will attach to the board, and I'll still be able to change out the picture if I want to. So I printed out some sweet little pictures of Cadence and Carson from Christmases past, and I left out Connor, but he won't know because he's only 1. So I'm going to cut those down, and then I used some scrap foam board to cut out the same shape as the back of my frame, and that's actually what's going to attach to the gnome, and then the frame is just going to go right over it. So I have my glass first, I'll put my picture and then my foam board, and then I'm going to make sure that my tabs are sticking straight up, and then I'll use my all-purpose cement to go onto the back and then pop that in there, stick the tabbies through the back, and then it's done. So I'm going to take the back of my frame and hot glue that to the back of my gnome, and that'll be our little kickstand. And I like using items from the Dollar Tree that you don't have to paint, because I think this is a really cute pattern, but I'm just going to kind of embellish him a little bit and make him even cuter. So I took a few different patterns of 5/8 inch ribbon, and I'm just going to cut those down and tie them together with a piece of jute twine, and then dovetail all of the edges, and then I'll poke that extra jute twine through the hole that's already at the top of my gnome sign and tie a big knot in the back so it doesn't pop back out, and it's done. So I'm just going to do the same exact thing with the red and black buffalo check gnome, but I had to add some glitter because it wasn't completely full where I took the wreath off. So I wanted to show you here, I spilled my glitter, and I am still to this moment a little glitter fairy, because this is that super fine glitter and it just went everywhere. My craft room is still sparkling. Anyway, so I just covered up those areas and then placed my frame horizontally and then popped it into the gnome, and it's done. And here's how they turned out. And first of all, my grandbabies are pretty stinking adorable, I must say. But this is a great way to have a little bit of Christmas past in your current Christmas decorations. It was super quick and easy, and you can embellish as much or as little as you want. But I love how these turned out, and I hope you like them too. For this Dollar Tree DIY, I'm using 3 of the smaller round mirrors, and they have the larger ones too, but I have a small skinny wall that I need some pretties on, so this worked out perfectly. So I'm just going to pop out the insides and get rid of the mirror part, and then using my Waverly white chalk paint, I'm going to paint all 3 of the frames. You could take this outside and spray it too, but this was just a little bit easier for me. And then I'm going to use my Cricut to cut out the words "Christ the Savior is born." And I'm going to be using some everyday iron-on in white. So I couldn't find any regular satin ribbon in my stash, so I decided instead to use, I think this is a blanket trim that somebody had gifted me because I'm not a seamstress, but I think that's what this is because it's folded over and it's that satin fabric. So anyway, I'm just gonna iron on my words onto the ribbon, and I should have laid a piece of parchment or paper of some sort because when I ironed onto the ribbon, it bled onto my mat. So do as I say and not as I do. So then once it cooled, I'm going to pull off that top piece and attach them to my frames. And I want these to look like banners. So I'm going to fold over each of those ends and let them kind of slide down and have a little bit from the bottom peeking out. And then I'll just hot glue that everywhere to my frame, making sure that I'm keeping my word in the middle. And then at the ends, I'm going to dovetail those or just make 2 angled cuts if it's too short to fold. And I'll do that for each one of them. So now I'm going to add some Dollar Tree Christmas greenery, and I'm just pulling off a couple of pieces from a stem and then hot gluing that. On the bottom one, I'm going to put it over to the left side just under my banner and use my hot glue to get those in place. And then I'll just take some berries from a holly branch and add that in the middle. And then on my middle ring, I'm going to put some greenery over towards the right. And then on the top one, I'm going to do it right in the middle. And I was going to make a larger bow for this, but it started giving me a Minnie Mouse vibe. So I made my bow a little bit smaller using some Walmart ribbon and just made a sweet little bow and put that at the top. And I used a chenille stem to wrap my bow and then wrap that around the top part of my frame. So I'm going to cover that up with another piece of ribbon. And then I'm going to take some more of that blanket trim and attach my 3 rings by gluing it on the front and then flipping it over and gluing it down in the back. And here it is all finished, and I think this is so pretty and elegant looking. I had planned to write the words, but my paint pen wasn't staying on this satin fabric. So if you just use some regular material and cut that in strips, I think that would work if you don't have a Cricut. So I love how this turned out, and I hope you like it too. For this DIY, I'm going to be using some mini trees, a condiment bowl, a plastic globe, a trailer ornament, some ribbon, and some Epsom salt. And so the first thing I'm going to do is pull apart my globe, and these are actually larger than the ones that they carried last year, or at least I didn't see these last year. So it's nice and big, but I'm going to pull that insert out. Then I'm going to take my smaller tree and I'm going to hot glue that to that insert. And then I'm going to take the larger one and cut off a tip that'll fit on top of my trailer and glue that on top. And that's going to cover the ornament holder part as well as being super cutie patootie. So then I'm going to take my Epsom salt and pour a whole bunch in there, and this is actually from last year, so this stuff goes a long way. And then once I fill it about 1/3 of the way, I'm going to shove my trailer and Christmas tree into it and let it just kind of lay there, and then I'll put in my insert with my tree on there, and then I'll just shake it around until I get it to where I want it to be. And ultimately it will stand up straight, but you just have to keep fiddling with it and get it to the right angle and how you want it displayed. So now I'm going to take my condiment bowl and I'm going to pull off the sticker, and then using my multi-purpose cement, I'm going to attach my globe to my bowl, and then I'll use some ribbon to wrap around that seam so that it doesn't show. And then I took some small 5/8 inch ribbon in different patterns, and I'm just going to make a little scrappy bow like we did for our little gnomes, and just attach that to the front, and then I'll add some greenery from an ornament, and that's it. And here it is all finished, and I think this is so sweet. I love that little trailer, and this would be a perfect gift, I think, for someone. Of course, do it in your own colors, but you know I'm doing the red and white, so I love how this turned out, and I hope you like it too. For For this DIY, I'm using a hula hoop, and this is kind of one of the smaller ones. They do have different sizes, so this is a little bit smaller than the huge ones. And I'm using my craft knife to pull off that outside taping, and it's a little bit hard to get everything in the shot, but you see what I'm doing, and once you get it going, it's a lot easier as you go. And then I'm using some duct tape to attach that connection, and I did pull out all of the beads that make the sounds when you do the hula hoop. And then I'm going to take it outside, and it's so dreary and ugly, but this is my painting station and I'm just going to paint that using my Krylon matte white finish. And then after a couple of coats, I'm going to bring it back in and then use some 5/8 inch ribbon. And I'm going to start right in the middle where that connection is, because that's going to be covered with some greenery and pretties. And I'll just hot glue that onto the back side. And I'll put a total of 3 pieces of ribbon going from the top to the bottom. And as you go onto the curve, you'll have to kind of glue your ribbon diagonally so that it's still straight but stays attached to that round curve, if that makes sense. And I measured 5 3/4 of an inch away from my center ribbon where my second ribbons would start. That makes no sense at all. So there's a 5 3/4 inch gap between my center ribbon and the 2 outside ones. So now I'm taking 2 bundles of Walmart lamb's ear, and these are the larger bundles, and I think they're a little over $3 a piece. I lost my price list, so I can't tell you exactly. And then I'll take some of the Dollar Tree Frosty greenery and place those on top of my 2 lamb's ear. And then I'm just going to take a nylon zip tie and attach those together. And if you don't have a zip tie, you can use wire or a chenille stem. And then once I get those attached, I'm going to kind of bend it so it gets a little curvy and then attach it to my hula hoop at the bottom. And then I'll just keep attaching it with my zip ties all along that curve. So now I'm going to make a Perky Bow using this red and white striped ribbon, and I got this at Hobby Lobby for $5, and it matches the ribbon that's on my Christmas trees. So I'm just going to fold that over, and I'm making 4 loops on each side, and then at the very last part I'm going to make 1 big loop, because that'll become our tails once I cut it apart. And then I'm going to find the center of my loops and make little snips with my scissors, and then feed my chenille stem into those little slits so that I can move my loops around a lot easier. And then I'll cut that big loop in half and start foofing out my loops. There's a lot of loops going on here. And then I'll take the extra chenille stem and attach that right in the center of my greenery. And then I'll feed my tails in through that greenery just so it's poking in and out of there. And then just to add a little more cuteness, I'm taking this small Merry Christmas ornament and tucking it into my greenery, and I'll just hot glue that onto some leaves so that it stays in place. And then I'm using this as a card holder, so I'm just using some clothespins to attach my cards, but this would be adorable if you had some Christmas pictures to put on here. I'm thinking of painting my clothespins either white or red. I don't know, I think it's pretty either way, but I love how this turned out, and I hope you like it too. I hope you enjoyed all of these projects, and if you did, don't forget to give them a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. If you're not already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button down below, as well as the little bell right next to it so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. Don't forget to check out the Crafting Cousins and According to Kat. I'll have those linked in the description box below. Remember the reason for the season. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!